Breaking NFL news coming out now. The Tennessee Titans have found their next general manager. It's Chiefs assistant GM, Mike Borgonzi, someone who's been labeled really throughout the course of this process as the #1 GM candidate out there, someone who's involved in every single area of the Chiefs front office, someone with a ton of front office experience working his way up from the bottom, spending all of his time with the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, you got to like the hire if you're a Titans fan. Right, like it's always tough when you are talking about like an up and coming general manager as opposed to someone who's done it before. You know, because you don't have free agency classes to look off of. You don't have draft classes to look off of. Of course, we can look back at what Kansas City has done, and Borgonzi obviously has played a big part, in the Chiefs' success. But we have to credit Andy Reid. We have to credit Veach. We have to credit Pat Mahomes, right? All of these different guys, ownership for the team's sustained success. But man, if you're a Titans fan, like you got to be feeling pretty good, right? Now, it is a bit of a weird situation because he didn't pick Callahan. The Titans, for whatever reason, let Carthen go after 2 seasons, but decided to keep Callahan after just the disappointment of a 2024 season. So we'll see how that whole situation plays out. But, obviously Borgonzi gets the #1 overall pick, which is obviously a massive lure, a massive attraction whenever you're talking to teams about potentially taking over as the head guy in charge. Now, in regards to the New York Jets, Borgonzi off the board. What's next? What's the next move? John Eric Sullivan is still out there, right? He is, I would say at this point, he's probably my top GM candidate if I had my pick between all the guys that the Jets have interviewed, and we've interviewed a ton. Louis Riddick, Thomas Dimitroff. I mean, the list goes on here. Lance Newmark, Ryan Grigson has been a guy that has been talked about pretty heavily. Gain from the Buffalo Bills. Moji from the Broncos, Hallaby from the Eagles. The list goes on here. I have not reached the all of the names on the Jets' first interview cycle. You got to imagine a decision is coming soon. But this is the good news, of course, for the Jets. There were only 3 GM openings to kick off this cycle. 1 is now gone. The Las Vegas Raiders, there's a lot of talk, there's a lot of buzz that they want to potentially give the head coach some more power, some more say. And it's looking like, of course, nothing is finalized yet, but it's looking like Ben Johnson to the Raiders seems likely. I'll say that. It seems likely. So you got to imagine that the Raiders are going to have interest in, potentially a front office member that Ben Johnson has worked with. And if, we think back to Ben Johnson's career, right, spent some time with the Dolphins, but most recently, obviously, the Detroit Lions. Chris Spielman has been a guy that has been talked about a lot, specifically when it comes to the New York Jets. Lance Newmark is someone who's been talked about, right, as a potential Ben Johnson confidant, right, potential partner with the Raiders. Now, where does that leave the Jets? Again, there are plenty of candidates out there. It does sting to lose Borgonzi. I'm trying to put my biases aside here, but Sullivan, I feel like, makes so much sense. But the Jets could go in a bunch of different directions. I would actually feel pretty good about a handful of guys. I did a video 2 days ago talking about my personal second interview list. And granted, I'm not sitting in on the first wave of interviews. I don't know which guys are in. I don't know which guys are out. I don't know who bombed, who did well. But I have my personal 6 that I'm looking at. And I think the Jets will be fine when it comes to general manager. Head coach, on the other hand, that's a little bit, that feels like musical chairs to a certain degree, with the Saints being interested in Glenn. Where's Flores going to end up? GM, I feel pretty comfortable, pretty confident in that we're going to land a qualified, impressive candidate. But, as we all know with this, with watching the NFL and monitoring these other teams, you got to start moving quickly. The Jets have interviewed damn near 30 people for these positions, right? I want to even say more than that. And I'm talking both GM and head coach. Like, there is a ton of candidates that the Jets have spoken to, that they've reached out to. It's time to start getting these guys in for second interviews, because you don't want to be left at the altar, right? You don't want to be hanging around. Titans made their choice. Raiders make their choice. A couple head coaches go off the board, by Monday, let's say, and our options start to dwindle. So ideally, I want to hire this GM. I want to start these second interviews very, very quickly. honestly as soon as possible. We haven't got word of any new general manager candidates in the last 24, 48 hours that they're looking in. Of course, we've seen some head coaching interview requests trickle in, but because there hasn't been any general manager news, that leads me to believe that they are starting to trim down that list based off of the guys that, that they've currently met with. Anyway, let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. Thanks so much for watching. I appreciate it. And as always, go Jets.